And thank you so much for joining us for this Saturday's edition of Alaska Weather. On the 6th day of November 2021, I'm Dave Percy, meteorologist, hosting today's show. And up first, there are no watches, warnings, or advisories out around the state for the next day or so. Wind advisory that was out over the eastern Arctic coast is down now. Winds come down under 50 miles an hour again. Still getting gusts over toward Kaktovik to about 45 miles an hour, but conditions improved since the advisory was out. And moving on out to the west, got possible gales coming into the western Aleutians with a frontal system there. Otherwise, no public watches, warnings, or advisories out for the Bering Sea, Pribilofs, Alaska Peninsula, or southern Alaska, and of course the Panhandle as well. For the satellite imagery, still seeing surges of moisture. One lifting up into the southeast coast over the southern areas, bringing some shower activity there. The other one to the north kind of lifting and pulling back to the west. That mass of clouds off the North Gulf Coast. And remnants of a frontal boundary kept rain going earlier today. About, 3/4 of an inch fell in a 12-hour period ending at about 2 p.m. Saturday afternoon at Cordova, but that had ended at 11 a.m. Rain had ended there. And much lighter amounts up around Valdez. Otherwise, south central Alaska, Kenai Peninsula, Soldotna picked up about half an inch of snow this morning, and moisture over the Panhandle. Still some rain going on there, but tapering off this afternoon. Some breaks there you can see over the central and northern areas. Petersburg had about 2/10 of an inch of precipitation, Sitka 1/3 of an inch, and Juneau 1/10 of an inch, with some shower activity still going on into the late afternoon. But that's going to continue to improve there. And out to the west, north to northwest winds continue northerlies through the Bering Strait, across St. Lawrence Island, continue to blow down along the Alaska Peninsula. Cold Bay, King Cove seeing northwest winds gusting 40 to 45 miles an hour. And then up along the eastern Arctic coast there, disturbance bringing 45 mile an hour wind gusts down from what they were last night. They were close to 60 miles an hour out of the east there at Kaktovik, down to 45 this afternoon, continuing a downward trend there. And then Kodiak Island just getting clipped by the northwest winds. Westerlies gust 41 miles an hour at Sitkinak Island. They're just south of Kodiak, but much lighter winds to the north. And rolling this through again, you can see some loose, disorganized clouds over the central Aleutians, and you can see the cirrus shield with the next frontal boundary that's remaining south, at least initially, south of the Aleutians there, but something will spin up eventually. We'll see, just jump on into tonight. See, it clears out over the Panhandle. Still a risk of some showers of that area, cloudiness there. Mostly toward Dixon Entrance, Heidelberg, maybe Metlakatla, and that's about it. Just a risk of a shower there. Otherwise, continues to clear out and dry out and clear out over the Panhandle there. Winds light and lingering snow showers. Turnagain Arm, southern Kenai Peninsula, maybe the North Gulf Coast, Copper River Basin, area light snow or snow showers with that 1,014 millibar low up just southwest of Fort Yukon along the Yukon River there, and a trough extending down the Kuskokwim Valley. Should trigger a few snow showers, but they'll be light, nothing really measurable, nothing more than a half inch or quarter inch at the most in that area. And Alaska Peninsula, snow showers continue but to decrease. Winds continue to slowly decrease, and some leftover moisture keeps a chance of rain or snow showers in for the Pribilofs, St. Lawrence Island. Light winds, high pressure over the Bering Sea, and that front stays put out there over the Aleutians, high pressure, keeping it back to the west there, so it's not able to move too much, at least through Sunday. Same pattern, clouds, but starting to dry out and cool off up over the northeast interior. Kind of a downward trend in temperatures. Same trend will continue over southern Alaska as well. And the Panhandle continues to dry out. Look for a partly mostly sunny day tomorrow. A precipitation free day for the day Sunday tomorrow, maybe Monday as well. And taking a look at Monday, see that system moves into the Aleutians and makes some headway into the southwest Bering Sea for periods of rain there and maybe some gusty winds. A little bit of moisture might find its way into the Pribilofs in the form of scattered light rain or snow showers, but winds won't be a factor at all. And that light wind pattern pretty much locked in over the eastern Bering Sea on up to the Chukchi Sea, Arctic coast. Light winds basically under the domination of Arctic high pressure for colder temperatures and low clouds and fog with light winds. Look for the winds to increase over the southern panhandle late in the day of that next approaching storm. And for the lows tonight, 30-35 for the panhandle, upper 20s Kodiak Island, mid-teens for Bristol Bay, and lower teens for the Kuskokwim Valley and Copper River Basin, otherwise 20s for south central Alaska, highs 30-35. Warmest down toward Homer, Seldovia, and Seward. Above freezing, though, along the North Gulf Coast. Everywhere else, probably staying below freezing. And upper 30s to mid 40s for the Panhandle. Lower 20s for the highs for the Kuskokwim Valley. That'll fall into the 5 to 10 degree range. Both Bristol Bay and the Kuskokwim Valley for the day on Monday, as well as the Copper River Basin. 15 to 25, south central Alaska, near freezing for Kodiak. And upper 20s to lower 30s for the Panhandle. Followed by highs upper 30s northern Panhandle, North Gulf Coast, upper 20s to lower 30s south central Alaska, near 20 in the Copper River Basin, staying in the teens for the Kuskokwim Valley, lower 20s for Bristol Bay. Up to the north, lows Sunday morning, mid to upper teens, central interior, 5 to 15, North Slope, Brooks Range, Arctic Coast, and maybe 0 to 10 for the Seward Peninsula and Noatak Valley, followed by highs maybe into the lower 20s for the Seward Peninsula, upper 20s St. Lawrence Island, and upper teens to mid-20s for the interior to the Arctic coast. Lows dropping below 0 now. Eastern Brooks Range, that's 12 below for Arctic Village, near 0, even south of the Brooks Range. 0 to 10 below for your lows, and then 0 to 10 above for the lows for the Tanana Valley, followed by highs in the teens. 5 to 10 for your highs, Brooks Range, Arctic coast, otherwise in the teens. And out to the southwest, lows tonight, upper 30s for the Aleutians, followed by highs in the mid-40s, followed by lows in the 20s for the Pribilofs, upper 30s for the Aleutians.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
First line weather graphic for Sunday morning. IFR, central eastern Arctic coast, southwestward across the North Slope, Brooks Range into the northwest interior. And IFR along the Kuskokwim River Valley, from the Delta right on up into the central interior and along and north of the Alaska Range to the White Mountains and covering the 40-mile country upper Tanana Valley. Some IFR in the Copper River Basin. Not too bad over the Panhandle. Some lower conditions, Lynn Canal Glacier Bay, but VFR elsewhere. Pretty good conditions over the Aleutians. Next front, though, pushing IFR up to AKwx westward to Chimney 2. And then for the afternoon, IFR kind of expands up into the southwest Bering a little with that system, but doesn't make much eastward progress. Marginal VFR for the remainder of the Aleutians, Alaska Peninsula, Bering Sea. IFR, eastern central Arctic coast, North Slope down to the Brooks Range. South of the mountains, though, a zone of VFR into the Yukon Flats. Marginal VFR over much interior Alaska. Some IFR still over the upper Tanana Valley, say Chena area eastward, just south of Eagle, just north of Tok. Marginal VFR, western Copper River Basin, Kenai Peninsula, but Cook Inlet, Susitna Valley, part of the Manuska Valley, VFR, as well as Bristol Bay, Togiak Bay, Dillingham, VFR, eastern North Gulf Coast, all of the Panhandle, VFR. VFR continues for the southeast coast into Monday morning, North Gulf Coast as well. Some maybe marginal VFR into the northwestern Copper River Basin. Otherwise, IFR along the central Alaska Range, possibly into the Fairbanks area, VFR north of there, and then IFR from the Brooks Range on out to the Arctic coast across the North Slope, Yukon-Kuskokwim Delta, IFR central, Seward Peninsula, IFR, and a band of IFR with that slowly to nearly stationary front over the west central Aleutians. That doesn't really make much progress. Stuck over AKwx with an IFR zone that's weakening throughout the day. Marginal VFR covers the remainder of the Bering Sea, Aleutians, Alaska Peninsula, Kodiak Island, Fognak Island, into the interior. Good VFR. Panhandle, good VFR, except Prince of Wales Island, possibly marginal. And the central Arctic coast, North Slope, IFR, with marginal VFR east and west of there and VFR to the south. Passes Anatovik IFR becoming marginal in the afternoon. Upward trend for Adigan as well, becoming VFR throughout much of the afternoon after a marginal VFR start. Lake Clark and Merrill, occasionally marginal throughout the day. Rainy, occasional marginal VFR at times. Sunday and windy, marginal VFR, but VFR south side. Isabel, IFR northern entrance, otherwise marginal. And for Mentasta, IFR northern approach, otherwise marginal VFR. Tanita, VFR on the north side, but marginal. And Fort Portage, marginal VFR. Chilcoot and White, marginal VFR, trending toward VFR, probably by late morning. And the freezing levels at the surface north of the Pribilof, south of the Alaska Peninsula and Kodiak Island, just off the North Gulf Coast, cutting across the southern panhandle, 2,000 to 4,000 feet out over the Aleutians. Icing, light to isolated and moderate possible over the western central Aleutian, southwest Bering, to a lesser extent eastern Kodiak Island, just catching the southern Seward Peninsula, southern Kenai Peninsula, and then a threat of some icing there from a system just south of the panhandle coming across Dixon Entrance into Prince Wales Island. Jet stream, trough over the western interior, northerly winds 65 to 80 knots across eastern Bering, east-southeast turning southerly 65 to 70 over the interior. And at 9,000 feet, we've got high pressure over the central Bering Sea and northerly flow 30 knots all the way down from the Bering Strait along the west coast to the Alaska Peninsula. Otherwise, pretty light flow over the interior, although northeast winds 20 to 25 knots there coming into the eastern Arctic coast, eastern Brooks Range area, light for the panhandle. 3,000 feet, 20 to 40 knot north winds over western interior Alaska. The 40 knots being the exception, more like 10 to 20, and then picking up to 35 knots across the Aleutian Range. And east-southeast 20 knots southern panhandle, 50 knots with that system out over the Aleutians. Turbulence, moderate chop, Adak and Atka in advance of that frontal boundary with the stronger winds. Moderate chop, southwest mountains and along the Alaska Peninsula. Otherwise, light to isolated moderate chop up along the western interior. After the break, I'll be back with the marine forecasts.
We can't just put the fires out because we can't put them out. We've tried that now for a century, and it doesn't work. It just makes the next one worse.
You may see a place like this and think, total devastation. And it's not your fault for thinking that.
But that depiction is, as we've learned from countless experts over the last 2 weeks, not the whole story, and not how you should think about wildfires.
The truth is, there are lots of types of habitats out west, and fire affects them all in unique ways. So it's important to start thinking about the big picture with wildland fires. So let's first rewind. To help us understand what's going on out west, Rob and I started calling up the experts, and what we found was that the story of fire, particularly in the west, is complex. So to understand it, we planned a road trip. Road trip time!
The goal of our road trip was to see as many forests as we could and meet experts around the region to help us understand the role fire plays out here. First destination was to find the forest burned by the now famous Great Fires of 1910. And at the heart of what is known as the Big Blow-Up, the logical first place to stop, the city of Wallace.
Hi, Sarah.
Hi. Good. Haley and I are in this cute town of Wallace, Idaho, which was completely destroyed by the 1910 fires. You can see how much damage this fire actually did. Let's send up the drone and see what the surroundings look like now. What we found was a small town surrounded by a dense forest, with every single tree just over 100 years old.
So everything we see behind us now, that's all new growth since 1910.
And to help us put these historic fires and the forests around Wallace in perspective, we met up with historian Diane Smith.
This is Wallace, and here are your fires.
All of this is the 1910 fires.
This is not that unusual. The fact is, it just was at a time in our development as a country. We noticed it, we paid attention to it, and we got the national attention for it.
Right. As it turns out, these fires helped reinforce the idea at the time that every fire needed to be suppressed at all costs. And this suppression for so long has led to new problems, namely thick forests full of fuel. But don't just take my word for it. Let me show you the difference.
Notice how different this place is than this one that has been thinned out quite heavily in the past. Or like an area like this that's been burnt quite frequently.
In fact, both of these areas show how many forests would have looked in the past under regular burns. The dead and low-growing material gets consumed easily by fire, very much unlike this forest, which has had fire suppression for over 100 years and could lead to a high-intensity fire.
And all of this dry, dead material, that's problematic.
So we went looking for a big fire and just followed the smoke.
Oh gosh, a huge crown fire. I gotta get this.
These high-intensity fires aren't great because in many forests they kill all the trees over a large area, even in forests that used to be very resistant to frequent fires. And nobody knows that better than the people that work in this particular forest.
There's green coming back, and I guess I've gotten somewhat used to it, and I still have hope that the entire Sierra Nevadas won't look like this, that we can maybe get ahead of it. So the fires nowadays can move from the surface right into the tree canopies really easily, where in the past, fires would have kept trees pruned, they would have kept fuel densities low, and so now you end up with a lot more high severity fires in the West than had a fire regime kept under its historic recurrence. This to me is more a lesson of fire exclusion and keeping fire out of the system. If we're keeping it out of when it would burn with a beneficial effect, it will burn, and the probability of it burning at an unbeneficial state is higher.
So again, this is where it's complicated. We thought if only we could stop the fires, we'd win the fight. But the fires like the King Fire here show that stopping the fires only made it worse. Add that to the fact that we're living closer than ever to these wild lands. So to help us understand the wildland-urban interface, we met up with CAL FIRE. And as we were pulling up to this neighborhood, one of the residents quickly came out to tell us about the latest fire.
Yeah, our biggest fear is fire. It was very scary. I mean, everybody was honking and get out, and you know, there's a fire.
This is the risk across California. The response piece alone isn't going to solve this challenge if the homeowners aren't organized.
Because we're all in the same boat. One match away from everybody losing everything. It's a real fear.
Literally, we could have that fire spread up in here within a matter of seconds.
Wow.
California is going to have fires. We're not going to stop all the fires in California, so we have to have an infrastructure that's fire resistant. We need to work on policies that help us engage in active management of our forest. That's using prescribed fire as a tool. It's all the things in the toolbox. It's a combination of managing our forest and a combination of protecting our communities that are in them.
If it wasn't complicated enough, this made it very clear that you can't just let the fires burn whenever they start. The forests need to be managed to help mitigate the risk to us. But using fire seems to be one of the keys to making things safer, and knowing the science behind fire is always key to implementing good management.
Fire Sciences Lab, right over here.
So we made a stop at the Missoula Fire Lab to try to understand what we know about fire.
You see the flames at the very top and how they're sticking to the slope?
They really are. Everybody's laying down.
They're laying down. Well, that's flame attachment. Actually a very difficult thing to understand.
Here at the Fire Lab, the scientists study the basics of fire. Understanding the complexities here helps firefighters and forest managers in the field better predict and fight wildland fires.
Fires are inevitable. The only choices that we really have is what kind of fire to have and when do we want it. And that's it. Almost? Ready. You're ready. Jason's ready.
Mark's team is prepping to light a huge bed of precisely cut cardboard.
You're not going to be in any danger. So when the lights go out, don't move. Gasoline.
This is one of many experiments they'll run to understand the physics of fire, how it moves, how it spreads, and all of this measured by precise scientific instruments and high-speed cameras. Tens of thousands of pieces of cardboard up in flames in mere seconds. The ongoing research will help us better understand fire with the ultimate goal that we can live better with it. But can we do that? There is one forest we knew of that seems to have figured out this coexistence with fire, a place where fires burn all summer, every summer. It's part of their way of life and a mentality we wanted to know about. And here we went out with our guides Frank Lake and Steve Valentine, who work with the local U.S. Forest Service and tribe to help keep a healthy forest.
This is perfect. The fire's basically come through and cleared out the understory, and all that's left are the trees.
Yeah, it's black and it's charred, and you just see a few of the earliest sprouts, but you come back in here a year, it's gonna be alive again.
And to many, this may seem destroyed, but they view it differently here.
That fire's medicine, because it's not if it comes, it's when it comes. We need fire, and fire needs us.
You see, fire needs people to remind us how important fire is to the ecosystem. Frank and Steve's ancestors have been burning this forest for millennia. It's now part of what makes the forest special. They just want to make sure that it's not forgotten.
Basically, what you leave behind is what's important.
When they say this is your foods and your medicines, your sacred places, your springs, your water, that's essential, that's who we are as people. We have to learn to live with fire. We have to learn to respect fire. We have to maintain that security. That's why I do what I do.
Haley and I have learned a lot on our journey. We've learned that fire is complicated, and it's not as black and white as we make it out to be, and it is an integral part of our forests. They've had fire running through them for thousands of years, and they will continue to have fire in them in the future. And we can't always put the fires out. We have to decide what kind of fires to live with, and that is why we need to work with these fire crews from around the country. We also need a public who understands the importance of fire on the landscape. A healthy forest, you see, is a forest that lives with fire.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Looking at the sea ice analysis from November 2nd, 4 days ago, and then comparing it to today's analysis, and you'll see that closing off continues, especially over the Chukchi Sea, still an open area there, but getting a lot smaller there as time goes on. In fact, almost closed off. They're just southwest of Point Hope and West Kivalina there, this narrow band of open water left. Backing it up again, you can see quite an increase there occurring, especially down over Norton Sound, thickening up ice or expanding there from the south coast. Norton Bay, of course, iced over. And that's going to continue for the next several days. And for the coastal water forecast, east winds 20 knots on the south coast, otherwise north to northeast. Lighter winds 10 to 15 knots, sea 7 to 9 feet. Inside waters, northern central, north winds 15 knots, 3-foot seas. Clarence Strait, southeast at 15 with 3-foot seas. And then small craft advisories for Clarence Strait on Monday, southeast winds 25 knots, north winds 30 knots for Lynn Canal, Glacier Bay, Stevens Passage, northern central inside waters, 30 knots sustained from the north, 6-foot seas, small craft advisories all along the outer coastline. On the south coast, they'll be from the east-northeast at 25 knots and east to north at 25 knots for the north coast. Cook Inlet, north winds 15 knots, seas 4 feet. Prince William Sound, east winds 15 knots, 3-foot seas. Southeast winds 15 knots for the North Gulf Coast, seas 3 to 5 feet. Strongest winds will be Kamishak Bay out of the northwest at 30 knots with 10-foot seas and 25-knot northwest winds for the Barren Islands. Outlook for the day Monday. Not too bad. Cook Inlet, northerly breeze 10 to 15 knots, 3 to 4-foot seas. North at 10 for Prince William Sound, seas 2 feet. North winds 15 knots around Middleton Island and variable at 10 knots for the western North Gulf Coast. Barren Islands, north winds 15 knots. And then for the Kodiak Island area tomorrow on the east side, north at 15, Chillicothe Strait, northwest 25, Bristol Bay, northwest at 20. Small craft advisories, Alaska Peninsula, northwesterlies at 25 knots, seas around 7 feet. Lighter winds in store for the peninsula on Monday, north to northeast at 15 knots. Bristol Bay, north at 15. Same thing for Chillicothe Strait, Kodiak Island, north 15. And for the Unalaska Island waters tomorrow, north 15 knots. Unmac Island, east 20-25 knots. Adak and Atka, small craft advisories. And that extends all the way out to Shemya for east winds at 30 knots, seas running 9 to 12 feet. Even stronger winds from Shemya to Kiska, northwest 40 knots on Monday, north 30 knots on Chitka Island, east-northeast 30 knots, Adak and Atka, and east at 30 for Rinmac Island, Unalaska Island, east to northeast 25 to 25 knots. Southwest coast, north to northeast winds 25 knots. Pribilof, St. Matthew Island, northern Bering Sea, northwest at 20, north 15 for St. Lawrence Island. And on Monday, southwest coast, north winds 20 knots, northeast 20 knots, St. Paul, St. George, and St. Matthew Islands, north at 15 for St. Lawrence Island. Norton Sound, northeast at 20 knots with 4-foot seas. Winds coming down the eastern Arctic coast tomorrow, still going for southeast at about 20 knots over toward Kaktovik to Demarcation Point. Otherwise, variable winds at 10 knots for the eastern Bulwark Sea coast, central and west coast, light from the west at 10 knots, seas 3 to 4 feet. And Wales to Cape Thompson, north winds at 15 knots. And for Monday, central eastern Bulwark Sea coast, east winds 10 knots. East winds at 15 knots for the western coast, and Wales, or Cape Beaufort to Cape Thompson, east at 20, and then Cape Thompson to Wales, north at 15. For tonight, lingering areas of light snow and clouds, central interior along the Yukon River there, down into the Kuskokwim Valley, and some scattered snow showers over the Copper River Basin into the North Gulf Coast, Prince William Sound, Kenai Peninsula, but drying out over the Panhandle. Still a risk of a shower toward Dixon Entrance, but pretty dry conditions developing there with clearing skies. Next system brings wind and rain into the western Aleutians, but that doesn't make it too far eastward, as high pressure over the central Bering Sea to the Fox Islands keeps it back to the west. Still areas of light snow in the interior, maybe the north slope, but amounts will be quite light. Downward trend in temperature, especially for southern Alaska. Colder and drier for the Panhandle, and that continues into Monday. We look for those northeast winds to increase on Monday along with the clouds, and chance of rain on the south coast.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.